Welcome to Conspiracist. Today we're undertaking a deep dive into a really persistent and, let's face it, fascinating hypothesis. It's the idea that governments, maybe around the world, have intentionally concealed evidence of extraterrestrial contact.
Yeah, it's a big one. We've got a range of materials here. Claims, alleged evidence, official responses. It's quite a mix.
Exactly. And our mission today, just to be clear, is to objectively evaluate the core ideas of this hypothesis. We're basing this strictly on the information within these materials we have in front of us, no personal opinions, just looking at the sources.
Absolutely. And it's kind of remarkable how long this idea, this specific cover-up theory, has been around and how widespread it is.
Okay.
Our sources, interestingly, point back to Roswell in 1947 as, a key starting point for the modern conspiracy theories about UFOs.
But Roswell looms large.
But what's really intriguing is that even before Roswell got all that publicity, there were people back in the 40s claiming telepathic communication with beings in spaceships.
Telepathic. Wow. So the idea was already percolating even before the famous crash.
It seems so. It suggests this sort of foundational belief in ET visits, and maybe even government awareness of it, might actually predate the events we usually think of as the starting point.
That early context is definitely significant. And the materials we have also flagged Donald Kehoe back in the 50s, so well before a lot of the later famous incidents.
Yeah, Kehoe.
He was already making accusations, wasn't he? Talking about a government conspiracy, even suggesting a specific silence group whose job it was to hide knowledge of flying saucers.
Exactly. So it shows the cover-up idea wasn't just a reaction to, say, Roswell or later sightings. For some people, it seems like it was almost a pre-existing suspicion. And then if you look at how things developed, you see this whole subculture emerging around alien abduction experiences. That really seemed to gain steam in the mid-1970s.
Right, the abduction phenomenon.
And those narratives often get incredibly detailed, don't they? Different types of aliens, where they're from, what they want. Complex mythologies, really.
Yeah.
And what's really striking is that some people within that community, they independently came to the conclusion that the reason their experiences weren't widely accepted, well, it had to be a government cover-up.
So the lack of mainstream belief wasn't seen as a lack of credibility, but actually as proof of suppression.
That's the argument some make, yes. Deliberate suppression.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and look at some of the specific alleged evidence and key events that often come up in support of this cover-up idea. Mass sightings, for instance. Things like the Phoenix Lights or various reports out of Russia. These get a lot of attention, partly because so many people report seeing something unusual.
That's true. The sheer number of witnesses is often compelling. But the crucial question is, does a high volume of eyewitness reports automatically mean it was extraterrestrial?
Good point. What do the sources say about that?
Well, they suggest a more nuanced view.
Yep.
They point out that known things, like satellites re-entering the atmosphere, can look like multiple bright objects moving together.
Ah, right, like debris breaking up.
Exactly. And people might misinterpret that as a large, structured craft with lights. You also have this shared human tendency, to try and make sense of ambiguous things we see, especially without all the information. So lots of people might agree on an extraordinary explanation when maybe a more ordinary one fits the facts.
Okay, that makes sense. What about Area 51? It's practically a household name for secrecy and, in popular culture, hidden aliens and crashed ships.
Area 51. Yeah. Its documented history gives a different picture, though still secret, obviously. Our materials indicate it started as a test site for the U-2 spy plane back in the 50s.
The U-2, right when UFO reports were spiking after Roswell.
Precisely. Commercial pilots were seeing these planes flying way higher than anything they were used to. They reported them as UFOs. And because the U-2 was top secret, the government had to stay quiet.
So that necessary secrecy kind of inadvertently fueled the mythology around the place.
It seems very likely, yes. And since then, it's almost certainly been used for testing other advanced experimental aircraft and military tech. So while we don't have total transparency, the available info points strongly towards advanced human technology, not stored alien craft.
So the takeaway might be that legitimate government secrecy, even for perfectly normal reasons, can create a vacuum that speculation rushes in to fill.
That's a very good way to put it. It creates fertile ground for all sorts of theories.
Then there's the whole phenomenon of alien abduction claims. You mentioned they peaked around the mid-70s. Maybe less prominent now, but still a big part of the overall story. It's interesting that some investigators noted the people reporting these things often didn't seem, psychologically unwell.
That is an important observation mentioned in the materials. Some psychiatric evaluations apparently found that many reporting these experiences didn't show signs of major psychopathology. And the detailed nature of some account, the way a whole subculture developed with its own lingo about different alien types, it's certainly noteworthy.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Well, yeah. It's also important to consider the psychological perspectives. Our sources mention factors like a general distrust of authority, or maybe believing the world is inherently dangerous. These things can make people more open to conspiracy theories generally. It might offer a way to make sense of a world that feels unpredictable.
Like finding an explanation, even a scary one, is better than none.
Perhaps. For some people.
Let's talk about Project Blue Book. That was the Air Force's official UFO investigation. It gets brought up a lot, often used by both sides of the argument.
It does. Its history, as laid out in our sources, is pretty complex.
Some people see its final conclusion, that most sightings were explainable and not a national security threat, as proof of a cover-up. Like they were deliberately downplaying it.
Right, that's one interpretation. And Blue Book did face criticism. That 1966 congressional hearing, for example, brought out inconsistencies in the explanations, even allegations the Air Force was minimizing incidents, maybe confiscating reports.
So not exactly a smooth process.
Not entirely. But, on the other hand, you have things like Project Blue Book Special Report Number 14. This was a huge statistical analysis, trying to categorize thousands of sightings, find natural explanations. They apparently had pretty strict criteria for calling something unknown.
So maybe a genuine attempt at a systematic approach, even if some felt it wasn't enough or was flawed.
It suggests an effort was made, yes. Whether it was sufficient or unbiased is where the debate lies.
We also have these specific, almost legendary incidents. The Lubbock Lights, 1951. Multiple witnesses, including science professors, saw these weird light formations.
Yeah, the Lubbock Lights. The Air Force later suggested things like Jupiter being bright, maybe electrical issues on planes in the area, even a meteor shower.
So explanations were offered.
They were, and incidents like that really highlight the challenge, don't they? Something looks totally inexplicable to eyewitnesses, even educated ones. But sometimes ordinary explanations emerge later with more investigation.
The Air Force trying to find natural causes, sometimes seen as dismissive but necessary scientific process too, exploring the mundane before jumping to the extraordinary.
Exactly. You have to rule out the knowns first.
Then there's the 1976 incident with the Iranian F-4 jets, encountering a bright light, getting radar lock, seeing objects described like missiles.
Another complex one. And again, the U.S. Air Force memo suggested possible explanations. Jupiter again, potential aircraft malfunctions, maybe a meteor shower, covering the different things the pilots reported.
It feels like a pattern, offering multiple conventional possibilities.
It does. And it shows how difficult interpreting these events can be, with visual sightings, radar data, the pilot's perceptions, all needing to be analyzed. Yeah. The source material does mention one of the F-4s involved did have a history of electrical problems, which could potentially explain some instrument issues reported.
Ah, an important detail. Now, the Travis Walton case. Alleged abduction in 75, got a lot of attention, movie made about it. But our materials say it's widely seen as a hoax, even by some UFO believers.
Yeah, skepticism around the Walton case is pretty high, according to these sources. They point to a few things, like the people involved apparently had a long-standing interest in UFOs already.
Okay.
And reportedly, they'd just watched a TV movie about an alien abduction right before it happened.
Timing.
And then there's the timing with a logging contract. They were apparently close to a deadline with a penalty clause. So the abduction conveniently explained missed work, raising questions about motive.
Add in inconsistencies in the stories, and you can see why many concluded it was likely faked.
Precisely.
What about the MJ-12 documents? For a while, these seemed like the smoking gun proof of a secret government group managing alien stuff.
MJ-12, yeah, they were huge for a time. But the consensus now, based on our sources, is that they're largely considered disinformation. Fakes.
Fakes created why?
The evidence strongly suggests they were deliberately created to discredit legitimate UFO research, specifically targeting researchers like Stanton Friedman, who was prominent.
Interesting. So using fake documents to muddy the waters.
It seems to be the case. But what's also interesting is that some theories pop up saying, okay, maybe these specific documents are fake, but maybe a similar secret group, outside normal oversight, does exist.
So the belief in a hidden control group persists, even if the specific evidence is debunked.
It shows how enduring that core idea is.
And that brings us almost up to date with the testimony of David Grush, former Air Force intelligence officer. His claims about the U.S. hiding a multi-decade program retrieving and reverse engineering UAPs, that really made waves recently.
It certainly did. Grush's background in intelligence gives his claims a certain weight for many. He's careful to say he hasn't personally seen non-human intelligence.
Right, but he says he's talked to many people in the alleged program, seen documents, photos, and that convinced him it's real.
Correct. And the fact that the Inspector General for the Intelligence Committees deemed his whistleblower complaint urgent and credible definitely adds significance.
He also made some pretty startling suggestions, like entities from other dimensions, malevolent events, agreements, putting our future at risk.
Very provocative claims. Though it's absolutely crucial to state, the Pentagon has flatly denied his allegations of a cover-up program.
Okay, let's pivot to the skeptical perspectives. A really consistent counter-argument we see in the sources is just the lack of unambiguous proof, like clear photos or videos of alien craft that actually hold up to scientific checking.
That remains a fundamental hurdle, doesn't it? Decades of sightings, claims, but still no single piece of photographic or video evidence that the scientific community agrees is definitively extraterrestrial.
And many seemingly amazing pieces of evidence, when you look closer, well, they turn out to be hoaxes or just misidentifications.
Exactly. And our sources emphasize that point. Especially now, with better data and analysis tools, many UAP sightings can often be traced back to ordinary objects or natural phenomena.
The materials also touch on psychological factors, why people might be drawn to conspiracy theories in general, things like higher levels of distrust, maybe seeing the world as dangerous, a tendency to see patterns or agency everywhere.
Yeah, the psychology of belief is relevant here. These kinds of conspiracy narratives can offer a sense of order, an explanation for things that feel chaotic or random.
Even if the explanation itself is unsettling.
Sometimes, yes. Having an explanation, even one involving hidden forces, might feel more comforting to some than facing uncertainty or randomness, especially if they've had negative experiences or feel powerless.
And we have the Pentagon's own UFO office, ARO. Their official reports state pretty clearly no empirical evidence of alien tech found.
Right, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Their public stance is that most sightings they've analyzed are likely misidentifications.
And they explicitly say they found no evidence that any U.S. government investigation ever confirmed a UAP sighting as extraterrestrial, or found any NDAs related to alien tech.
That's their official finding. It directly challenges the idea of a current large-scale cover-up of recovered alien technology. They also stress they haven't found first-hand accounts of alien tech among the people they interviewed.
So, a direct contradiction to some whistleblower claims.
A direct contradiction from the official body tasked with investigating.
One final point from the sources on skepticism. The distinction drawn between SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and ufology.
Ah, yes. A very important distinction. SETI operates firmly within the scientific community. Peer review, testing hypotheses against data. The standard process.
Whereas ufology.
Ufology often operates outside those established scientific norms. While it looks at potentially interesting phenomena, it generally lacks that rigorous framework of hypothesis testing and peer review. And that's why it faces skepticism from mainstream science.
It's about the methodology, really.
Fundamentally, yes.
Okay, let's briefly touch on the motivations. If there were a cover-up, why? What reasons are suggested? One big one seems to be strategic advantage. Military advantage, technological edge.
That's a very commonly cited potential motive. From a purely national security angle, if you made contact or recovered advanced tech, keeping that secret to maintain an edge over rivals. It's a plausible, if ethically complex, government goal. A huge potential advantage.
Makes sense from that perspective. Another reason often brought up is fear of public panic. Societal disruption. This idea of an ontological meltdown if people learned we're not alone.
The potential for major societal upheaval is definitely a concern you hear raised. How would established religions, cultures, social structures react? The fear of mass panic, irrational behavior. It's a plausible, though maybe somewhat paternalistic reason governments might cite for secrecy.
Protecting the public from a truth they supposedly can't handle.
Something like that, yes.
Then there's the idea that revealing contact could simply undermine government authority. Existing power structures, political systems, their legitimacy might be challenged.
Absolutely. If humanity suddenly realized it's part of a much larger cosmic neighborhood, The authority of purely terrestrial institutions could be weakened. That fear of losing control and influence is a significant political factor to consider.
And finally, what about just fear of the unknown? Concerns about potential threats, especially if some non-human intelligence isn't friendly. Grush mentioned malevolent events.
That's a sobering thought. The possibility that not all ETs might be benevolent. If there was a credible assessment of risk, of hostile intent, a government's prime directive is usually protecting his people.
So concealment could be framed as a necessary security measure against a potential threat.
It could be, yes, especially if contact involved entities perceived as dangerous.
So we've covered quite a bit. We've explored this hypothesis of a government extraterrestrial contact cover-up, looked at the alleged evidence, the official responses, the skeptical views, all based on the sources we had.
We have, and the materials really highlight that spectrum. Numerous claims of sightings, encounters, hidden information, but also strong counter-arguments about misidentification, hoaxes, psychological factors.
And the recent whistleblower testimony adds a really current, complex layer to these questions that have been around for decades. Even while official reports keep saying there's no empirical evidence of alien tech.
Yeah, it's clear from this deep dive into the materials that this is an incredibly complex, multifaceted issue. And based purely on these sources, there are no simple, definitive conclusions presented.
A lot to think about. Thanks for listening to Conspiracist.